Creating great prints starts at the early stage of actually taking the picture. Photography has endless permutations. You can either take a fast action picture, which requires you to be alert and ready to capture the right moment. Or if you're into landscape photography, then you need to have patience to wait for the right lighting. One of the many advantages with digital photography is that it isn't going to cost you any more to capture 1 or 100 photographs. In our North Wales picture, waiting for the right light only required us to stay around for a short period. The next stage is to carefully look through your pictures and select the perfect shot for making a print. Here we can see that a bright sunlit scene doesn't have a lot of drama. The picture's looking flat. The next shot is much better, but not quite there. The detail in the foreground trees are a distraction. Looking through the remainder of the pictures, we can analyze each shot in turn, looking for the good and bad points. The final shot is the one I want to print. This has a lot of drama. The foreground trees are in sufficient shade without losing any detail, and the luminous green field together with the farmhouse draws our attention. So let's open this image and make a few tweaks. Now with the image opened, I can look at it in far greater detail, and I can spot immediately down the bottom part of this picture an unwanted telegraph pole. So let's remove this by using the healing brush. And all we need to do is just paint over the pole, and hey presto, it's disappeared. Another aspect of this picture is I'm not too happy about the sky. Although it's looking dramatic, I think I can add a lot more drama to the picture. In the old days of film, this could easily be rectified by placing a graduated colour filter on your lens. And you can also do this with digital cameras too, but there's a far better way of doing this, and this is how you do it. Let's create a new layer by clicking on the new layer icon, and then we'll go to our colour swatches and we'll reset these to the default colours of black and white by just simply clicking on the little button there. And now I want the gradient fill, so click on the gradient fill, and I can click on the swatch at the top here because I want to change the colour on this. So at the moment it's going from foreground colour to background colour, which is black to white. I'm going to click on the background colour, the white, and I'm going to reduce the opacity down to 0, which in actual fact makes it transparency. So we click OK on this. And now just draw a line using your new layer from top to about the middle of the picture. And if it's not quite straight, hold down the Shift key and this will constrain it in absolutely 90 degrees or 45 degrees increments. Now we've added a dark sky to the top. Although this isn't looking particularly natural, I don't like the look of this. What we can do now is go to the blending mode of that particular layer, and we'll change the blending mode to overlay. And we can see now immediately the clouds have been brought out. Another permutation you can do on this, I'll just turn that layer off or create a new layer just to show you what you can do. And we'll now select the foreground color of, let's say, one of the popular filters used to be a Tobago filter or tobacco filter, and a brown, so let's click on that, and again just draw a line down holding down the Shift key to constrain it, change the blending mode to overlay, and now we've got this color, but that's not looking particularly good. So if we click on the layer there and then press Ctrl and U to open up the hue and saturation, we can now change the color to whatever color you want as a background. And photographers would pay a fortune for a complete set of filters like this, but with Photoshop you can just create them as you want them. Okay, I don't particularly want that anyway, so I was just using that as an example. Let's turn on this layer again. Okay, so now I want to further tweak the picture and bring out a little bit more emphasis on some of the light and darker parts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this background layer by just dragging a layer down onto create new layer, and that's duplicated it. So now, highlighting the new duplicated layer, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to select Curves. I'm just going to darken the entire image down, so don't worry if it's looking a bit too dark. What I'm after is detail in there, so just darken the entire image. Just say OK. Right, and that's far too dark for my liking. So what I want to do now is create a layer mask. So create a layer mask, and that's layer mask. Click on there to highlight that, and now we're going to use our fill bucket, paint bucket, and just fill the background with black. Now this is in actual fact hidden, this entire layer, from the picture because we've masked the whole lot off. So now if we take a brush and we select the white, we can now paint in the dark areas. And this is a technique which, if you've worked in a darkroom, you'd be dodging and burning, and you can dodge in areas. There is the dodge and burn facility available, dodge and burn, but once you commit these to the image, then they're permanent. But the method I'm showing you now actually allows you to undo any of these actions, so we can just bring in different sides. If I'm not happy the way something's gone, I can just swap my background colors around by pressing the letter X and just undo parts of the image I'm not particularly happy with. So we can now build up the entire picture and just darken down some of the edges. Always keeps the interest focus in there, and I just want to darken down very slightly there, and I think I'm quite happy with that actually. I'm just going to lighten up some of the background there. Okay, that's fine. So now all we need to do is File, and we'll do a Save As. Now we've finished manipulating the picture, let's print it. For this I'm going to use the manufacturer's own premium glossy photo paper. Wear a pair of cotton gloves when handling any media. This will prevent body oils coming into contact with the media surface, which in turn could result in ink not properly penetrating the coating. Ensure that the media butts up to the right hand side guide, and push the media guide up against the paper, and this will prevent the paper from skewing sideways. The next task is to actually print it, but before I do that I want to check my image size. So let's go to Image, Image Size, and I'm going to put this into inches, and I can see now it's going to produce a 14.297 by 9.497 size picture, and I'm going to be using some A3 plus media, so this is going to be quite a small image on a large sheet of paper. So I actually want to magnify the picture. So an easy way to do this is to change the resolution, but before you do that we'll take off the resample image button and we'll change the resolution to something like, let's say, 260, and we can see now we're going to be producing a 16.5 inch approximately by 11 inch print, and that should be more than sufficient quality for an A3 size piece of media. So we'll say OK on that, and now we can go to File and we'll click on the Print, and we can see now that the picture orientation's in the portrait mode, and I don't want it as a portrait, it's a landscape. So let's click on the landscape icon here, and let's change it to landscape. But something's not looking right here. The top of this mountain seems to be cut in half. So what's gone wrong? Well, we need to go into page setup, and now we need to look at the settings for our media, and we can see immediately that the size is wrong. It's actually been set up for an A4 size media. So let's go into this and select A series, and we'll select the A3 plus media, and the media type, well, we're not going to be using plain paper. I want to use photo paper, and I've got some premium glossy paper. The mode, I don't want it automatic, I want a custom mode because I want to use one of the profiles. So let's go to custom, and we'll turn off the column adjustment from within the printer driver. So this means the printer driver is not going to apply any color adjustment. It's not going to apply a profile. I'll come back to this in a couple of seconds, and we'll click OK. It looks OK so far. Right, and now we can see the preview. We've got a nice border around the picture, and this allows me sufficient room to put it in a nice frame and hang it on the wall later on and still see all the picture. Okay, so what about the color management bit? Well, the color handling, it's already set to Printer Manager's colors, but I've actually turned that off. So I'm going to now select Photoshop Manager's colors. And now I need to select a printer profile. Well, your printer will have come packaged up with a series of canned profiles, and one of them will be your Epson Premium Glossy Media. So now this profile is going to be applied to this file. All that remains to do now is to press the print button. We speeded up our clip, but to produce an A3 print will take approximately 3 to 4 minutes. So by now you've probably calibrated and profiled your monitor to produce wonderful looking pictures on screen. And you may have also created a custom profile for the media and printer combination. But what about the image itself? Well, this image is looking very blue. It was taken on a late January day and the light was fading fast, so the image is looking very blue. So I want to color correct this. So what's the best way to go about it? Well, my favorite technique is to actually use curves, and we're going to create a new adjustment layer. So we click on the create new adjustment layer icon and we'll select curves, and up comes the curves palette. And normally we'd use the curves to emphasize highlights and maybe put detail in the shadow areas, etc. But I'm going to reset that. Press the Alt key down and click on reset. But now I'm going to use the color channels to actually adjust the colors. So let's go and select the first one, red, and we can see the histogram on screen here behind the curves. On the left hand side is our shadow areas, and on the right hand side is our highlight areas. So I'm going to grab the highlight slider and I'm going to drag it along till it meets the base of the highlight area, and as you can see the screen is looking dreadful. So let's go to the next one, which is the green, and I'm going to do exactly the same. Drag the highlight area to the base of the histogram there. The screen is starting to look a little bit better now, and we'll take on the blue because we can see a little bit of yellow cast in there, and although it's not as extreme, we're still going to take the slider to the base of the highlights, and I'm also going to move the shadow areas because it's looking a little bit cold in the shadows, and we'll take that one to the start of the histogram, and we can see the image is looking much better now. And we'll go back to the master channel, the RGB, and now I can just make a little bit of tweaks to the image itself and put my little curves in on there, and that is looking absolutely great now. We can actually save this histogram here. We can save the preset and we can recall that at a later stage if you have a series of pictures taken at the same time. But I'm going to say OK on that, and we can see the before and after by turning off the adjustment layer and turning it back on again.